heard. Very humble man. Knowing what he knows or understanding what he knows and is able to impart to us, I asked him for a bio, and I'm sure he could have said a whole lot more than this, but he just says raised in Chicago by Democrat parents, named after Robert Kennedy, since we both have the same birthday of November 20th. He's involved in student government in high school and college. He's a member of the John Birch Society since 2006. And I'm also a proud member of the John Birch Society. He's a precinct committee man in the Republican Party since 2006. We're going to try to convert him before this meeting's over. He's a disciple of Jeffersonian republicanism. He's an advocate of Austrian economics. So I give you Robbie John.
That's okay. Yeah, thanks so much. I'm not a real big fan of bios. I'm not here to impress you on my educational background, and I think this is important because I'm just an average citizen in the Republic. And people look at me as being Mr. Know-it-all, and I'm not Mr. Know-it-all. But I am Mr. By the book, read it, try to understand it, and share what you learn with your fellow citizens and argue about these different issues about the Constitution, which, all of us should be doing. Not that you have to go and get some degree and write books about issues, although I believe that's a great thing to do. But unfortunately, the average American doesn't buy the books and get involved in these constitutional issues and talk about them. Even if you're wrong, if we started talking about these issues and using a lot of the documentation that the framers, I won't say founders, used, as well as the men that were living at the time of the Constitution, we could all be a lot closer to the truth than what we have today. A lot of my friends come to me with a lot of constitutional questions, and I always try to put it back on them. What conclusion did you come up with your studies? Well, I didn't really study it, but I thought I'd ask you because you know all the answers. I'm not the savior of the United States of America. You are. It's your country. It's your responsibility just as much as it is mine. And I'm nobody special. I go to work every day. I'm a middle income kind of guy. I don't have a lot of money. I'm just living in the system just like everybody else. But so what I did was, one of the big issues is Kamala Harris and this whole natural born citizen issue that's come up. And so I enjoy studying different constitutional issues. It gives you a greater deep depth on what the intent is, what our framers spoke about, and what conclusions you can possibly come up with. And so I'm sure everybody here has heard the issue many times in the past. And so what I wanted to do is put a presentation together just to give you some information on this whole natural born citizen. And you could take this information, write it down, and engage with your friends, whether they're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Constitutionalist, even Communist, even if you like, and talk about what you guys believe, about this natural born citizen issue. But the one thing I would strongly recommend is use documentation, because everybody in this country has an opinion and nobody has any facts. And that's what we base a lot of our arguments on, my opinion versus your opinion. But what did the framers say about it? Oh, I don't know. Actually, I never read the Constitution. So this is what I'd like to share with you. The natural born citizen clause, we do see in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5, no person except a natural born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution shall be eligible for the presidency. So in my presentation, the objectives here is just to provide historical context and understanding of the definitions of the natural born citizen, compare the two schools of thought related to defining natural born citizen and a citizen. A lot of times when we discuss issues about politics, we do not use definitions and we use generalities. And when we use generalities, guess what happens? You get general ideas, you don't get specific ones. And you know how, for example, a lot of people believe the income tax is unconstitutional. And then people argue, well, you're saying that taxes are unconstitutional. Well, I didn't say taxes are unconstitutional. I'm talking about the income tax being unconstitutional. And you understand how one is dealing with taxes generally, and the other one is talking about a specific type of tax. And so this is why definitions are so important. Let's take a look at Camilla Harris, a natural-born citizen. This was from a August 18, 2020 editorial board. Camilla Harris is an American citizen because she was born in Oakland, California in 1964. So says her birth certificate and weight of American jurisprudence, including a common law concept of jus soli, which I'll go into later, known as a birthright citizenship, and the 14th Amendment, which says all persons born or naturalized in the United States, subject to the jurisdiction there are citizens of the United States. Now you might notice, since I know I can use this little pointer, that says here that she's an American citizen. The problem is, what we're talking about is a natural-born citizen. Now you understand why it's so important to define terms. Somebody's arguing in a citizen, and you might be talking about a natural-born citizen. So you see why it's so important to talk about specifics. Camilla Harris is not qualified to be vice president. According to a September 21, 2020 issue of the New American Magazine, and this is a publication that's related to the John Birch Society. If you're a Bircher, you know the New American Magazine. And I read the whole article, and you'll notice the Constitution does not define natural-born citizenship. Neither has the Supreme Court or Congress. The term natural-born citizen comes from the English concept of natural-born subject, which came from the Calvin case in 1608 decision. The very source of the natural-born citizen standard is known to us today. The Swiss jurist Emervittel defined that term in his seminal book, The Law of Nations. And I'm sure everybody here has read that book because it's like, I think it's 724 pages long. It's a pretty long book. So let's take a look at some of the ideology on this natural-born citizen philosophy. Can you guys see over in here? I just can't move any farther over to the right. So the two schools of thought with respect to the natural-born citizen. You've got William Blackstone and Emervittel. So William Blackstone is a very prominent person in our system of government, our understanding of legal system, and he uses the philosophy of the jus soli, which is the commonly referred to as the birthright citizen, is the right of anyone born in the territory of a state or nationality or citizenship. Emervittel promotes jus sanguinis, which is the principle of nationality law by which citizenship is determined or acquired by the nationality of ethnicity of one or more, both parents. Children at birth may be citizens of a particular state of either or both parents, of their parents, have citizenship of that state. So we have two guys here, very prominent in the history of the United States' legal system, but they both have two different philosophies on this whole natural-born citizen. The objective of the natural-born citizen, according to Joseph Story, and this is why why this is so important in our Constitution, is from Joseph Story's Commentaries on the Constitution in 1833, Section 3, and page 1430. No, I think that's his 1437. No, I think that's page. I'm not exactly sure, but anyway, the permission of the naturalized citizen to become president is an exception from the great fundamental policy of all governments to exclude foreign influence from their executive councils and duties. So just to give you an idea, why do we have this whole natural-born citizen clause? This is the reason why. We don't want some guy from a communist country running for the presidency. Everybody here doesn't really need to know, basically, what that means. If you believe in one thing, you don't want somebody leading you who's going to believe something completely opposite. It cuts off any chances for ambitious foreigners who might otherwise be intriguing for the office, and it imposes a barrier against those corrupt interferences of foreign governments in executive elections, which have been inflicted the most serious evils upon the elected monarchies of Europe. And so he's basically talking about what happened in the past. This has happened many times in the past in many governments. And so he's reiterating why it's so important that we have this whole natural-born citizen clause in our Constitution. So let's take a look at Emmett Vittle's whole look at this whole the natural-born citizen. We see that he was a Swiss jurist. He did write this book, The Law of Nations, and in his book, he was an international lawyer, and so we see that in 1775, Benjamin Franklin turned to Vittle's book as a kind of beginner's guide for countries. He even secured a copy in the Continental Congress reporting in December that was continually in the hands of the members as they scrambled to set up a working government. Jefferson almost certainly consulted it while drafting the Declaration of Independence. Some of his most famous lines paraphrase Vittle. Okay? Now, what government was being created in 1775? Was it the Constitution? No. Was it the Articles of Confederation? No. But then what was it? What governments were being created in 1775? Somebody said it, the states, the Continental Congress. So in 1775, and this is again a part of our history we don't know much about, is there was life in this country before the Constitution. Most people believe the country got started in 1775. Nobody knows when the Constitution got started. They think it happened right after the Declaration of Independence, but they don't know anything about the Republic under a Confederacy. So here, Franklin's saying that, hey, 1775, a lot of these guys were using Emmett Vittle's philosophy on creating their own governments. Interesting. So let's go into looking at what Emmett Vittle specifically says about these natural-born citizens. In section 212, pages 217, he says, the natives or natural-born citizens are those born in the country of parents who are citizens. Okay? As a society cannot exist to perpetuate itself otherwise than by the children of the citizens, those children naturally follow the condition of their fathers and to succeed to all their rights. The country of the fathers is also therefore that of the children, and that these become citizens, true citizens, merely by their tacit consent. I say that in order to be of the country, it is necessary that a person be born of a father who is a citizen. For if he is born there of a foreigner, it will only be the place of his birth, not his country. Now, when we look back in antiquity, who do you think teaches the child all the political philosophies of the country? Somebody said it starts with an F. Father, Papa, not the government indoctrination centers we call the public school systems. So dad is the one who teaches the children about the type of political philosophy that the children need to understand. So this is why he's making these comments. Before I move on, can anybody, how many people here were in their state militias? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 10. Okay, so let's go on into the natural-born citizen. Children of citizens born in a foreign country. Okay, let's see what Emmett Vittle has to say about that. As it's asked, oops, went to the wrong hit. Oh, did I go too far? Yeah, here we are, right? No, wait a minute. Is this country? Yeah, okay. So the children, it's actually asked. This question was actually asked in the past. It's asked whether the children born of citizens of a foreign country are citizens. The laws, you'll notice this is plural, have decided the question in several countries, and the regulations must be followed. Do you remember I told you guys that what was the job of Emmett Vittle? He was a what? What was his occupation? Yeah, he was a jurist, but what else did I say in the presentation? What was his occupation? He was not just a lawyer, he was an international lawyer. Keep that in mind. Emmett Vittle did not just study law in Switzerland. He studied international law. He studied the law of many different nations. You had a comment?
Yeah, and Samuel
Yeah.
They were all the unit-like design recognized throughout the rest of the world. The Wilson founders, Franklin Privy, the Belgian was the preeminent society, more than Dusseldorf, more than Germany.
Yeah, that's true. But we're gonna go on and look at both sides of the coin, because that's what I want to do, is present to you both sides of the coin so you can make your own determination as to what you believe is what you'd like to follow. So so he's talking about this about the fact that this question has been brought up in several countries. By the law of nature alone, children follow the condition of their fathers and enter into all their rights. Remember, I cited section 212. The place of birth produces no change in this particular. Remember, he said, if your father is a foreigner, the place that you're born is just the place you're born. That doesn't make you a citizen. And cannot itself furnish any reason for taking from a child what nature has given him. What did nature give him? The citizenship of his father, not the place he was born. So try to remember that, because we're going to look at another ideology a little bit later. Naturalized citizen, okay? A nation or the sovereign, in this time, the sovereign would be considered the king, who represents it, may grant to a foreigner the quality of citizen by admitting him into the body of the political society. This is called naturalization. Now, you know what word is not here? Natural-born citizen. A sovereign cannot make a natural-born citizen. They can only make a citizen. So whether it's a monarchy or a government, they can make citizens. They cannot make natural-born citizens. A natural-born citizen is done naturally. This is very important, because a lot of times people will argue citizen and natural-born citizen in the same context, and they're not. They're two different types of people. So once we see this natural-born citizen, let's take a look at the time of the adoption of the Constitution, okay? Or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. When was the time of the adoption of the Constitution? This is the next question that basically comes to mind. In Article 7, the ratification of the Convention of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, when was the time of the adoption? Because that's what's in the Constitution. We have two different provisions. We have either you're a natural-born citizen or a citizen at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. So let's take a look at ratifying conventions. Delaware ratified in December of 87, December Pennsylvania, we got December for Jersey, then the next year in 88 we got Georgia, Connecticut, then we got February for Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina. So after these guys here, New Hampshire jumps on board June 21st. With the state's ratification, this Constitution becomes legal. So in conclusion, we have to say that you had to be a citizen of the United States between December 7 and June 21st of the following year. So let's see who was a citizen at that time. When did the presidents at the time of the adoption become citizens? Well, the Declaration of Independence, we therefore, the representatives of the United States and General Congress assemble, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions by the authority of the good people of the colony, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies and a right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is ought to be totally dissolved. And then it goes on to everything else. And they talk about at the bottom that, well, the states have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all the other things and acts which independent states may have a right to do. Guess what you get? What did I tell you independent states have a right to do? Make citizens. Can independent states make natural-born citizens? No. Okay? So, guess what we just did? We renounced our citizenship with Great Britain. There it is, right there. Well, I'd say black and white, but it's not in black and white. It's in black and parchment. And I don't know where did the gentleman go that did the last presentation. He ran out, but I was going to tell him, does everybody see my color I'm wearing? It's parchment and black. Anyway, I did this anyway. So I don't know how the colors came out with white, but this presentation was supposed to be, these colors are supposed to be in red, but so you can see. I don't know if everybody can see, but anyway, I'll just go over. We got the president, birth date, a citizen at the adoption. So Georgie boy, he's born in 32. Adams 35, Jefferson 43, Madison 51, Monroe 58, Adams 67, Jackson 67. Then we have Van Buren 82 and Harris 73. Were these guys all citizens at the adoption? Yes. They were, oops, what did I do? These guys all became citizens. These guys all here all became citizens because in 1776, they were born before 1776. So all these guys were natural born citizens of what? Of the what? Empire of Great Britain, but actually not all of them. One of them, and I forgot which one, I forget, but one of them's fathers were actually from Ireland. But it is correct. All of these guys are natural born citizens of the crown. When we signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776, they all became citizens of the United States of America. This is why the provision has to be in there, because they all knew they were not natural born citizens. Because when they were born, they were all born in where? They were born under the British Dominion, you see? Except one of them, and I forgot which one, but one of them has, I forget which one. So let's take a look at, if we take a look at Van Buren, he's actually born in 1782. He's actually born after the Declaration of Independence. So this is a really good trivia question. Who was the first natural-born citizen to become President of the United States of America? Martin Van Buren. He's the first natural-born citizen to become President of the United States of America. Isn't that exciting? Who is the last guy to be a non-natural-born citizen would be William Harris Harrison, because he was born in 73. So all these guys are citizens at the time of the adoption. That's how they're constitutionally qualified to become president. Okay? So let's move on and let's take a look at the other side of the coin. Okay? The natural born citizen, according to William Blackstone. Blackstone was born in 23 in London. He was also an English jurist whose commentaries on the laws of England, 4 volumes, is the best known description of the doctrines of English law. The works became the basis of university legal education in England and North America. So I'm sure everybody would agree that Blackstone had a great deal of influence on our country in the 1700s. So let's take a look at what Blackstone has to say about this whole natural born citizen. In his commentaries on the laws of England, in Book 1, he says on page 366, natural-born subjects are such as are born within the dominion of the Crown of England. That is, within the allegiance, or it is generally called the allegiance of the king, and aliens such are born out of it. And no, I did not misspell those words. In those days, the F could be used as an S. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more authenticity by using the S in the words. But we see here, wait a minute, Blackstone says that all you natural-born subjects are such as born within the dominion of the Crown of England. Has nothing to do with your parents, where they're born. Your father could have been born on the moon. But if you're born in one of the dominions of the Crown, according to Blackstone, you're a natural-born subject, which is the same thing as a natural-born citizen. So you see, we have 2 different ideologies here. And you remember when I told you guys about Emervito? He said according to what he was citing, was that he looked at several countries, right? Not just Sweden. But that doesn't mean all countries adopt the same ideology with respect to the natural-born citizen. Here, Blackstone shows us that England does not do that. So let's go to page 731. Natural-born, I keep hitting the wrong button. Natural-born subjects having a great variety of rights which they acquire by being born within the king's legions and can never forfeit by any distance of place or time, but only by their own misbehavior. If you take this, you will understand the mind of King George during the Revolution. In those days, natural-born subjects having a great variety of rights, which they acquire by being born within the king's legions, and can never forfeit it by distance of place or time. See, King George did not want to let us go. Why? In his mind, you're a subject of England to the day you die. There's nothing you can do to change that, unless by your own misbehavior. Let's go on and see what else Blackstone talks about with respect to this natural-born citizen. Now, you remember we talked about Joseph's story, talking about how it's very important that we don't have foreigners with foreign political ideologies in our high levels of government. Well, one of the highest levels of government in England was the council, or the Privy Council, okay? In his Commentaries of the Laws of England, Blackstone says in Book 1, Chapter 5, The Rights of Persons, page 229, but the principal council belonging to the king is his Privy Council, which is generally called by way of eminence. This ain't just a club. This is an eminence, the council. This is like where people say, I work for the, what was it when they're CIA operatives? They say, I work for the company. I'm a company man. You know what I'm talking about? Well, you can walk around in England and say, oh, I'm on the council. And everybody knew what that meant because of its eminence. So let's take a look at what the definition of this word, the Privy Council, is from the American Dictionary of English Language from Noah Webster, 1828. Privy, admitted to secrets of state. Man, that's pretty important. I'm not privy to any secrets of state. Anybody here privy to secrets of the state? Well, we got one guy in the back here. I know I'm not. So the Privy Council of a king consists of a number of distinguished persons selected by him to advise him on the administration of the government. Guess who he cites? Blackstone. He does not cite Emervittle. Interesting. The Privy Councillor is a member of the Privy Council. Privy Councillors are made by the king's nomination without patent or grant. Again, he cites Blackstone. He does not cite Emervittle. So let's take a look at some of the attributes of the Privy Councillor. He is a noble, honorable, and reverend assembly. He's in the king's court or palace. How many people here can go hang out at the White House anytime they wish? So these counselors are somebody of preeminence. The king's will is the sole constituent of a privy councillor. Lifelong appointment by the king, but subject to removal at his discretion. So if you're in the council, you're in. I mean, talk about I have the king's ear, or isn't that cliche that says I have the king's ear? This guy definitely has the king's ear. So let's take a look at these qualifications of members to be fit on this board. Any natural-born subject of England is capable of being a member of the Privy Council. Any natural-born citizen. Emervittle has a whole different ideology about this, but Blackstone doesn't. He's different than Emervittle. So any natural-born subject taking the proper oaths of security of the government and the test of security of the church. Remember, this was an issue during the Revolution as well, when we didn't want religious tests to be able to allow people into certain government positions. This is where some of these doctrines actually come from. But in order to prevent any persons under foreign attachments from insinuating themselves into the important trust, as happened in the reign of King William, in many instances, it is enacted by the Act of Settlement 1 that no person born out of the denominations of the Crown of England, unless born of English parents, even though naturalized by Parliament, shall be capable of being on the Privy Council. Now, does anybody know who this William guy is that they're talking about? Okay, that's right. That's right. And so when you read back on this, you will see, again, this is the same issue that Joseph's story is bringing up as well. if you have foreigners that come in and they insinuate themselves into our political system, you can have a great deal of problems. But what does he say? He says that no person born out of the denominations of the crown, unless born of English parents, even though they're naturalized by Parliament. So he's saying that even if the guy is naturalized by Parliament, his parents still need to be born in England. They have to be a part of the crown. So even in this respect, to be on the council, if you were born outside of the dominion of England, your parents had to be born within the dominion of England. And guess what? You can't walk around and say, well, I got naturalized, so I get to go in. Nope, not even a naturalized person. Only somebody whose parents were actually English citizens. No, no, they could be naturalized. They could be naturalized, but the actual person in question who wants to be on the Privy Council, he cannot be naturalized. So if you use Emmert Vittle's definition, when the parents became naturalized, then the stipulation is that the child has to be born after the parents were naturalized, not before. Because remember, natural born citizenship is nothing governments can change. They can only change your citizenship status. So let's take a look at a natural born citizen, Vittle versus Blackstone. And let's take a look at some of the people that we've all heard about on the news and in elections and what have you. And I really appreciate someone taking a picture because I work really hard on this because I'm not a master of using PowerPoint. But anyway, let's take a look at some of the guys. We've got name, birth, date, places, father's birthplace, and date of citizenship, Vittle and Blackstone. So let's take a look at Marco Rubio. Rubio was born in 71. He was born in Miami, Florida. His father was born in Cuba. So under the natural born definition of Vidal, he is not a natural born citizen. But under Blackstone, he is. Why? He was born within the dominion of the United States of America. Let's take a look at John McCain. He was born in 36 in Panama. His father was born in Iowa. So that makes him a natural born citizen because his father was a citizen. Not only that, he was a natural born citizen. And under Blackstone, he would also be a citizen because even though he was born in Panama, he was born in a naval air base. And that was under the jurisdiction of the United States of America. And remember, when people talk about the United States of America, a lot of times they're talking about not only the states that make up the United States, but also the jurisdiction of the United States. So like, for example, when you go to foreign embassies, you know, they'll tell you, well, this is a French foreign embassy. If you commit a crime, you're actually committing a crime against the nation of France. And it's vice versa. That's why we all respect our embassies all over the world, for the most part at least. So McCain was born in a naval hospital under the jurisdiction of the United States. So he's a natural born citizen under both criteria. Ted Cruz, he's born in 70. Guess where he's born? Calgary, Canada. His dad was born in Cuba. So he's not a natural born citizen under Vittle, and he ain't a natural born citizen under Blackstone. So he ain't a natural born citizen only of Canada. So let's take a look at Kamala Harris. She's born in 64 in California. Her father was born in Brownstown, Jamaica. Okay. When did he become a naturalized citizen? I cannot find that information. I've searched on the internet. If anybody can find that, I would be very interested in finding that information. But if she's running for office, I believe that the burden of proof is on her to prove the status of her father. It's not my responsibility to prove her father was a citizen. It's her responsibility. It's her father, not mine. So under Vittle, she is not a natural born citizen because, to the best of my knowledge, her father was born in Jamaica. But under Blackstone, she is a natural born citizen because she was born in California. Now here's a very interesting individual here. Everybody, the big one that was a big issue was Barack Obama. So he's born in 61 in Honolulu, Hawaii. His father, supposedly, was born in Kenya in 1936. So according to Vittle, he is not a natural born citizen. But because he was born in Hawaii, he meets Blackstone's definition of a natural-born citizen. Now, does anybody know who this guy is? Bingo. Somebody watched the movie that I'm just about to bring up. How many people saw the movie? Go ahead, you can say it. Dreams from My Real Father. Raise your hand. Very interesting movie to watch. I would strongly recommend you watch it because it talks about what the director thinks the real Barack Obama is actually Frank Marshall Davis Jr. Okay, and I'm going to go into that. Okay, President Barack Hussein Obama, he was born in '61 in Honolulu. According to the movie, if you watch the documentary, he ascertains that he was born the same day, but he was born at 516 13th Avenue in Seattle, Washington. In the movie, he says a midwife was called to the house. Grandfather phoned into the Hawaii Department of Health to register a home birth. And this again is from the movie Dreams of My Real Father. So the father, Barack Obama Sr., who was born in '36 in Kenya, he never became a naturalized citizen. You'll notice that the Barack Obama Sr. actually came to the United States to study economics. He was never interested in becoming a citizen of the United States. Once he got his degree, his PhD, he went back to Kenya to be a government economist. So the whole motivation of Obama, the old man coming to the United States, was not to become a citizen. His intent was to get an education, go back to Kenya, and work for the government. The father, no, that's my point. His objective was never to become a citizen. He came to the United States to get a PhD. I think he got his undergrad and his PhD in Hawaii. And then when he got that PhD, he was heading back to Kenya. He wanted to get a government job as a government economist. So, Frank Marshall Davis from Dreams of My Real Father, he was born in December 31, 1905 in Arkansas City, Kansas. And Barack Obama is a natural-born citizen of the United States. So let's take a look at the next slide. And again, if you watch this documentary, I strongly recommend you watch it. But these are some of the pictures of Frank Marshall Davis. And this is Barack Obama. This is Barack Obama, and this is his son. Barack Obama actually was married and had, I think, 5 kids. So this is George Obama, his son. This is Frank Marshall Davis and Barack Obama. So this guy, they're trying to give you the impression that this guy was born from this guy. Well, you see who he really looks more like. You see a lot of the same features in his mouth and what have you. Look at his, look at the lips on George Obama and look at his dad's. See the little dimple? It's much wider. His on Barack Obama is thinner and longer, just like his father, his real father. And so if you watch the documentary, he ascertains that he believes that Frank Marshall Davis is actually the biological father of the former President Obama. So in my opinion, I believe that Barack Obama is a natural-born citizen under both definitions. Let's take a look at the 14th Amendment because this is another issue that comes up as well. And there's a lot of background, and I'm sure some of you guys probably studied the background of the 14th Amendment. But all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Section 214 from Vito says that a nation or a sovereign, remember I was telling you this? The king who represents it may grant to a foreigner the quality of citizen by admitting him into the body of the political society. This is called naturalization. So this is to fulfill this. It was ratified in '68. Notice the 14th Amendment does not define a natural-born citizen. Remember what I told you? Governments cannot create natural-born citizens. They can only create citizens by naturalization. So we see that slaves became citizens of the U.S. under the 14th Amendment because under that they did not become natural-born citizens. Their children would become natural-born citizens. This amendment was designed for former slaves and not Native Americans, i.e. the Indians. So you have a little context of the application of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment created citizens. It did not create natural-born citizens. Remember, I told you, only natural births create natural-born citizens. Governments cannot create a natural-born citizen. Let's take a look at the Federal Convention of 1787, okay? During the convention, during September 4th, on page 507, if you read the book, it talks about the Committee of 11, and David Beerley reported, and these are all the guys that were on the committee at the time. And 2 weeks prior to this date, a Committee of 11 was created by the delegates to consider, I think it was 9 different points to add into the Constitution. One of them was the natural-born citizen. So section number 5, which is section 2, no person except a natural-born citizen or citizens of the time of the adoption of the Constitution shall be eligible for this office of president. Guess which philosopher or jurist these guys quoted with respect to where they came up with this from? Nobody. I cannot find any information that says, you know, Robert Morris said, you know, Emmer Vittel was talking about the fact that the natural-born citizen has to be a guy who's born who's a father who's a citizen. So under all the documentation I have been able to find, and I've searched really hard on the internet and in other books, and I can't find anybody who actually quoted that we came up with this provision because of Emmer Vittel or because of Blackstone, which kind of sucks. But it is what it is. James Madison, in a letter to Henry Lee in 1824, he makes an interesting observation. He says, if the meaning of the text be sought in a changeable meaning of the words composing it, it is evident that the shape and attributes of the government must partake of the changes to which the words and the phrases of all living languages are constantly subject. What is metamorphosized would be produced in the code of law if all its ancient phraseology was to be taken in the modern sense, and that the language of our Constitution is already undergoing interpretations unknown to its founders. This is in 1824, and we've already got people who are redefining terms and redefining words in the U.S. Constitution. And this is one of the concerns James Madison has. Again, if we look at 213 inhabitants, which are different from your citizens, the inhabitants, as distinguished from citizens, are foreigners who are permitted to settle and stay in a country. The perpetual inhabitants are those who have received the right of perpetual residence, not citizenship. These are a kind of citizens of an inferior order, and they are united to the society without participating in all its advantages. Their children follow the condition of their fathers, and as the state has given to these the right of perpetual residence, their right passes to their posterity. So even if you're a permanent resident, your children do not become natural-born citizens because you are not a citizen of that country. And one of the other questions that was brought up to me is, especially when it comes to Blackstone talking about the fact that under English law, you couldn't give up your citizenship. And we see that in Section 220, whether a person may quit his country. But a man is born free and the son of a citizen, when come to the years of discretion, may examine whether it be convenient for him to join the society for which he is destined by his birth. If he does not find it advantageous to remain in it, objects, evinces a design to reduce them to absolute despotism. Does anybody know where that came from? Yeah. Does that sound like something somebody would, in the years of discretion, would contemplate? He is at liberty to quit it, and it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. So he's at liberty to quit it on it and making a compensation for what he has done in his favor. A man's obligation to his natural country may, however, change, lessen, or entirely vanish, according as he shall have quitted it lawfully. When we created the Declaration of Independence, which actually is not actually called the Declaration of Independence, we called it that later on. We did this lawfully the Declaration of Independence, and with good reason. We had 27 reasons why we quit in order to choose another. And if we see here the same information I had established here as well, just to give you a little bit more context. And then I go into a lot of the details on George Washington, and his father was born in Westmore. Let me see if I can find John Adams. His father was a British subject in Quincy, Mass. Jefferson, Orange County, Westmoreland, Braintree for Adams. Okay, so it was Jackson. Andrew Jackson's father was actually born in Northern Ireland, although at that time he was, Britain did own Ireland. And so he was a British subject. So this concludes the presentation. I just had some other supporting documents that don't really have, not going to change any information. But when discussing this issue with people, this is a very interesting dilemma. Do you use the definition of Blackstone, that you're born in this country, or do you use Emervitals, that you have to be born of a citizen in the United States? Any comment or question?
Yes, one important matter not discussed there is what the founders, the framers, did legislatively in the first Congress. Mostly framers and their associates, they passed a naturalization and citizenship law.
The one of 1790?
They used the term a little vaguely on natural-born citizen, and the definition was a little vague, but it tended a little bit more toward Blackstone than Biddle. So that raises the question, when we want to determine what the founders believed, should we judge what they read or judge by the laws that they made?
And if anybody doesn't understand, what the gentleman is bringing up is actually here in this other slide. And this is the Naturalization Act of 1790. And you'll notice, and the children of such persons so naturalized, dwelling within the United States, being of the age of 21, at the time of such naturalization, shall also be considered as citizens of the United States, and children of the citizens of the United States that may be born beyond the sea or out of the limits of the United States shall be considered as natural-born citizens. Now, some will argue that what they're saying here is they're using the same phraseology that Blackstone used, that if you were born outside the realm of England, remember, your parents had to be citizens of England. They're using the same phraseology. Now, if you see Emervitals, the Law of Nations, the natives or natural-born citizens are those born of the country of parents who are citizens. And this is the same ideology that Emervittal was using, as a society cannot exist to perpetuate itself otherwise than by the children of citizens. Those children follow the natural condition of their fathers and to succeed all their rights. So this I just put inside here. But say that in order to be of the country, it is necessary that a person be born of a father who is a citizen. For if he is born there of a foreigner, it will only be the place of his birth and not his country. But again, even under this is the Naturalization Act of 1790. It doesn't tell you specifically, are we using Emervittal's philosophy on just somebody being born here, or are we using Blackstone's? They're only making reference to the fact that Blackstone talks about if somebody was born beyond the sea, just like he did. Yeah. Question?
Hello. Not to get too off in the weeds, but and it hasn't been amended, so the wording that's in the Constitution and in the stand legally. But if we were to, for instance, accept that now women can vote, so it would be the mother or the father, how does that change the standing of some of the things that you showed as far as Kamala or Obama or?
Well, when you read Emervittal's, he talks about, in the beginning of his commentaries, he talks about parents. Later on, in all of his sections, he actually talks about the father. And this brings us to the question, why only the father? And the reason is because in a lot of cultures, the father was the one who taught the children about politics. Mom would teach the children between the time they were born up until a certain age, because she was the nurturing. The mother is the first teacher to the child. Once a child becomes of a certain age, then father picks the ball up, and he starts talking to the children about more complex ideologies, such as politics.
But the argument could be made, though, that our culture is not the same as the culture at the time, and that the child could pick up from the mother. So we've changed the definition or merged the definition of mother and father.
Well, the problem is we don't have a definition. That's my whole presentation. We do not have a formal definition of what this natural-born citizen is. So it's very hard to argue one side or the other. And if we want to apply today's society, most of these citizens in the United States, they don't know anything about our constitutional republic. So we basically have the blind leading the dumb. And so, even people who have been born and raised in the United States all their lives, 3 or 4 generations, they don't know anything about the Constitution. You know where they learned all of it? From the public school systems. And God save us all for that education. Question right here?
Yeah, there are many things about Kamala Harris. There are many things about Kamala Harris that make her more unfit to be president than her parentage.
Well, there's a lot of things I think would make a lot of presidents unfit to be president, but that's a whole nother issue. Go ahead.
When a person relinquishes their citizenship of their natural-born country to go to another citizenship of a different country, do they retake that natural-born citizenship when they come back to their...
Well, remember, you can't renounce a natural-born citizenship. You can't do that. You can change your citizenship from country to country, but you cannot change your natural-born citizen. That's something that happened in time, and that's just the way it is. It's just like, you get hit by a car. You can't go back and say, well, I didn't get hit by a car, I'm going to get hit by a truck. You got hit by a car, it happened at this place, you can't change that. Now, the other problem is, even though you leave a country to create a citizenship in another country, that does not mean that the other country recognizes your relinquishment of the citizenship. Because there's 3 parties in that contract. There's the individual and the 2 countries. And this is why some countries may not let you go. And this is what the king was saying in his commentaries, that you can't relinquish it in time or place. You cannot dissolve it. Once you're an English subject, you die an English subject. Question there?
To my knowledge, Blackstone never used the term natural-born citizen. It was always subject.
Yeah, that's correct.
So usually when I have somebody that uses that definition, I ask them, do you think the founders intended a specific meaning, used specific wording in the Constitution, or did you just believe it was a generality?
From my investigation, and that's been brought up before, that the words subject and citizen are interchangeable. It's just a different word that they use in England for their quote-unquote citizens.
Just to follow up on that, there are specific writings by the founders. I think Webster was one, and maybe Paine, specifically distinguishing between subject and citizen in our new country.
And what was the definitions of those?
So a subject was owned by their country. Like we were talking about the king there, you're born in his turf, you're his. Whereas a citizen was a part owner in their government. So that was the distinguishing line they were making, both between their government they were forming, but also between their position in relation to their government.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll have to look that up. That would be a good information to study.
You're exactly right, but it's analogous to subject in the case examined here. And that's what the War of 1812 was 50% about, because Blackstone and English and Parliament and the King did not recognize what we assert in the Summary View of the Rights of British America, which was the pre-draft to the Declaration, and we assert again in the Declaration, every man has a right to remove himself by renouncing that allegiance to the British Crown.
And to proclaim it to another.
The English Crown did not acknowledge that, and so many Americans, the crown, under the power of its navy, seized on the high seas and did
Impressment.
not recognize that they were Americans, and seized them because they spoke English or because they had a Scottish or an Irish
Accents,
accent,
yeah.
or were presumptively forever till they died, or by their misbehavior,
That is correct.
Englishmen.
And so that is correct. And so this is why it's important to study these issues out. So when you see things that happen, such as what happened in the War of 1812, you'll at least understand why the British had the attitude that they could take their subjects, because in their minds, they were subjects. In the minds of the Americans, they're citizens. And so even though you may not agree with them, at least by looking at this information, you'll understand why people have different opinions on the issue. I have to wrap it up, but I appreciate everybody's time, and I hope this provoked a great deal of thought for you guys.